On today's episode, I'm giving you my early top 12 tight ends for 2021, coming right up. And what is up, everyone? Welcome to the Gridiron Fantasy Football Podcast for Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. And I'm Chip Donner, host, and thank you so much for listening today. If you're a new listener, thank you so much for joining us as well. If you'd like to share our podcast, you can find us over on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. If you'd like to watch us, you can watch us over on YouTube at Gridiron Fantasy Football. So please do me a favor, hit subscribe, support the show so you don't miss any more episodes this offseason. And on today's episode, I'm going to talk about my top 12 tight ends for 2021. This is one of the hardest positions to try to rank just because of the volume and the guys that are pretty much the guys who are, the guys who are consistent, and then trying to figure out who's going to fall in that top 12 of the tight ends and all that. But did my best to figure out what I think would be the top 12 for 2021. But before we do that, let's talk about some of the news that took place on Monday. Now, going back to the pages, we know last week we were talking about how Mac Jones was taking more of the first team reps and looked a little bit better than Cam Newton. And it continues to be the case. Albert Breer continues to report that Mac Jones has done enough to really give himself a real chance to try to win a spot as the starting quarterback over Cam Newton. They have to figure out what they want to do at quarterback. They got to figure out if Cam Newton's the guy going forward. They're going to be able to win with Cam Newton. Obviously Cam Newton's on the decline, but he's still, there's a talent around him, he still can be a decent enough quarterback. But we don't know what Mac Jones looks like right now. We don't know what he looks like in games. So obviously Cam Newton has the experience. Cam Newton has been an MVP in this league. So I still want to give benefit of the doubt to Cam Newton on what's going to happen with New England. But the real test will come during real competition, during the preseason and whatnot, and see how that goes. But right now, all the hype is around Mac Jones right now. And also Albert Breer is reporting that rookie quarterback Justin Fields for the Chicago Bears should get a lot of playing time in the preseason, right? This is obvious. He's a rookie. They want to see what they got. You're going to see him play a lot more than Andy Dalton during the preseason. But I just still think that they shouldn't just beat around the bush. Just start Justin Fields. Like I said last week on the podcast, I do think that it really makes no sense not to put Justin Fields in there. I understand it's a confidence thing, whatnot, and Andy Dalton has been there, done that, but I don't see why, if you're going to take someone like Justin Fields early in the draft, I know he's raw, I know he's a rookie, but man, just throw him in there and see what he can do, and hopefully win you some games. But I don't think there's really any upside to start Andy Dalton over Justin Fields, other than the experience there. I know that goes a long way, but right now I think Justin Fields should be more considered the starter than he is now by the coaching staff. But we'll see what happens. In Cleveland, Nick Chubb and his agent are talking about a contract extension. So, obviously this is a guy that the offense is kind of built around. They are a run-heavy offense. I know they got OBJ. I know they got Jarvis Landry. I know they got a lot of, pass catchers, but they're a run-heavy offense, and Nick Chubb is the guy to build around. Him and Kareem Hunt are the 1-2 tandem that is just a really, really good complement to one another. So seeing him get paid and seeing him, be in Cleveland for a longer period of time has always been nice to see. Cleveland is on the upward trend of, being one of those consistent playoff teams. So it'll be cool to see Nick Chubb kind of be part of that. Then also coming out of Kansas City, looks like Patrick Mahomes looked pretty good during OTAs, that he did not seem limited. So anybody who's worried about his toe, the surgery they had in the offseason, it looks like he's good to go, and he should be 100% for the season. So anybody who's worried about drafting him or has some apprehension on drafting him early, he's gonna be a guy that he should be good to go by the season start. But as of right now, that's all the news that we have today. Kind of a slow news day, not really much going on, but obviously I try to update you guys as much as possible, especially on Instagram. I try to, if there's any like really big breaking news, I try to at least be able to do something on the social media to kind of let you guys know that what's going on. But before we get into the rankings for 2021 for my tight end position, I just want to say again, hope all the dads out there had a happy Father's Day. They spent a lot of good quality time with their dad or with their kids, and I know for me it was awesome spending the whole weekend with my daughter and just be able to really do things that we usually don't do. So it was fun. Really enjoyed the time. So I hope all the dads out there were able to really enjoy time with their family and whatnot. So with that being said, let's go right into the rankings. I'm gonna go from my 12th rank to my first rank, and at number 12, I have Evan Engram. So Evan Engram last year finished as a tight end 15. He scored 141 PPR points. He played all 16 games, which is a rare thing for Evan Engram. He usually does not play 16 games, but last year his stats were a little on the lower side. But he still got 654 yards receiving. He had a touchdown, a passing touchdown. Then he had a rushing touchdown. The thing about it too, he had 63 receptions for 109 targets. So the stats weren't there for him last year. The Giants were kind of a mess all last season. But you look at the 109 targets, they were still trying to get him the ball. It just didn't go his way last year when it came to what he was getting on the stat sheet. But the thing is, he had 22% of the target share last year. He led the team. He had the 5th most targets for a tight end in the slot position with 44. So, they always try to find ways to get that matchup, mismatch and, out of the slot. And Evan Engram is kind of a hybrid tight end receiver. But, he's been a pretty, when he's playing and he's getting the targets, he's pretty productive. Last year, I think kind of threw out what happened last year just because the Giants overall after they lost Barkley was kind of a, disarray. But the only bad thing about Evan Engram that I have is that, he hasn't led the team in targets since 2017, which when he was a rookie. You got to think about what's going on this year, right? They got Barkley's coming back. They added Kenny Golladay. They still got Darius Slate, and they still got Sterling Shepard there. So all those guys are going to demand targets. So they will take away for targets from Evan Engram. In a sense, I do think that it does take away some of the targets from Evan Engram, but I still think because he plays tight end, I don't think that he's going to see such a huge drop-off because I feel like he's the safety net for Daniel Jones. And I think that because they can add more mismatches with Evan Engram, that he'll get a lot more opportunity, that he'll be able to be a pretty productive fantasy tight end. But the problem is that the strength of schedule this year is pretty challenging for him. He has a 7th worst strength of schedule. So you factor that in, factor in some of the additions to the actual offense this year. You got Barkley coming back. Barkley, when he's healthy, they try to get him close to 100 targets as well. So he's a guy that we see really eat up those target shares. So we'll see what happens, but I do think Evan Engram around 12 is a pretty good ranking. I think that's good value for him, because he has the potential to be a top 5 guy if everything goes his way. I'm a Daniel Jones believer this year. I think that with the work he put in the offseason, with the talent he has around him, I think Daniel Jones has an opportunity to be a really good value pick for fantasy drafts this year. Now moving on to number 11, I got Mike Gesicki. Last year he finished at the tight end 7. He scored 159.3 PPR points. He played 15 games. He had 703 yards and 6 touchdowns. He had 53 receptions off 85 targets. So, he had a 15% of the target share last year. He saw the 2nd most targets for a tight end with 53. He was, the good thing about this year too, he has the 4th best strength of schedule. So, with him, he does play the slot a lot. He does have, when you have the 2nd most targets for a tight end with 53, that's from the slot position. So they like using him in the slot. They like trying to create those mismatches. So I think for him, that's the good things going well for Mike Gesicki. The bad side about things, they added Jalen Waller right from the draft, and they added Will Fuller. So, he generally was the 2nd option. You had Devontae Parker was the number 1 guy. Then it looked like Mike Gesicki was the guy that was that 2nd option. Right now, because they added so much, I think that you're not going to see him being used as much or getting the same target share. And with Ryan Fitzpatrick moving on to, Washington, who knows if Tua's going to utilize him a lot, if he's going to be kind of his first read or second read, who knows. But I think that, Mike Gesicki at 11 is a pretty good rank for him for this year. Now moving on to number 10, I got Robert Tonyan. Now, he finished the season as the tight end 4. He was very inconsistent last year. He had a couple blow-up games, but he wasn't a guy that you would expect to have a top 5 finish, but he scored 176.6 PPR points. He played all 16 games. He only had 586 yards receiving, but he had 11 touchdowns. Okay, so he had 52 receptions on 59 targets. So not a lot of high volume there. That's probably one of the lowest we've seen when it comes to actual targets and volume. And he was very efficient last year. So that being the case, I mean, I don't know exactly how he will be this year, but the good thing about last year was that he did have 8 end zone targets, and he converted 8 end zone targets to 7 touchdowns. So when they're around the end zone, he was used. So that's where majority of his touchdowns came from. So he's a guy that I don't think you're going to see consistent play from him, but a guy that could potentially get you a touchdown because they use him so much in the end zone. But the problem is, just like Davante Adams, just like Aaron Jones and that whole Packers offense, the downside to it, what's going on with Aaron Rodgers, right? We still don't know a lot what's going on with him. We know that he's not coming to Green Bay right now, but the thing is that even Robert Tonyan, he was 4th on the team in targets, right? So that going back to the whole volume thing, will he have the volume in order to be a productive fantasy guy that you can feel good about starting every single week? He rarely ran routes in the slot, so that means that they strictly use him off the line. So that to me puts me to where that volume is how are they going to use him? Are they going to try to create mismatches based on their offense? But on the other downside, the Green Bay Packers for the tight end position have the 3rd worst strength of schedule. So there's a lot of factors in there, but these are the guys that we have right now available when it comes to picking out the best top 12 guys that you can draft without, overreaching or whatnot and trying to figure out some of the volume. But, if Jordan Love does play, and it's a big possibility that that happens, that maybe Robert Tonyan becomes the guy that is his favorite target. But that's yet to be determined. We don't know yet until training camp starts, until the preseason starts and actual season. So, I think right there, Robert Tonyan, there is some value there, but I'm just concerned because of the fact that he had one blowout game in week 4 against the Falcons. That's where he had his 33-point PPR game. And then after that, it was pretty much up and down the whole entire rest of the season. So we'll see, but I have him at 10 as of right now. And going to number 9, I got Logan Thomas. Now, this was crazy to me. He finished as the tight end 3 last year. He had 176.6 PPR points. He had 670 yards and 6 touchdowns. This was crazy. He had 110 targets and 72 receptions. So I didn't realize he had that many targets last year, but they were feeding him the ball last year. Like the pros about him, he had 19% of the target share. He saw the most targets from the slot with 70. So Washington is a team that tries to create those mismatches, and they try to get him in the slot because he ran the most routes from the slot last year with 70. He had the most targets from the slot with 70. So the only problem with that is that now they brought in Curtis Samuel. Is he going to play the slot? Will that take away from some of Logan Thomas's production there? And also, too, I didn't realize this as well. The running back position saw 153 targets last year total, right? So, but J.D. McKissick had 109 targets. So that's concerning to me. Bring in Curtis Samuel. J.D. McKissick, got his targets. Does Antonio Gibson take he had like 44 targets last year. Does he come up and get more targets this year as well? How does that start looking with Ryan Fitzpatrick as the quarterback? But I feel like he is a decent tight end to draft. I don't know if he'll get the tight end 3 finish this year because they added so much to the offense. But right now, Logan Thomas, he's a guy that seems like a pretty good value pick with some good upside. So maybe this doesn't hurt him as much with Curtis Samuel coming in because of the new offense. But who knows? But Logan Thomas at 9 for me. And then moving on to number 8, I got Dallas Goedert. He finished last year as like tight end 20. He scored 116.4 PPR points. He only played 11 games last year. He had an injury throughout the season. He had a fracture in his ankle, and then he only had 524 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. So, if you look at Dallas, Goedert and Robert Tonyan, right, they were close in yardage, but the difference is Tonyan had 11 touchdowns. So, and even though Goedert only played like 11 games. It's one of those things where, that's the craziness of like the rankings and whatnot, what makes you finish a certain way and everything. But, Dallas Goedert had, 46 receptions and 65 targets. So the good thing about it, he had 11% of the target share. The downside to it is he going to be healthy You still got Zach Ertz there as of right now. He hasn't been traded. How will I usually don't like teams that have a new head coach, a new offense. You got a new starting quarterback with Jalen Hurts, because we know Carson Wentz was very favorable to the tight ends, especially Zach Ertz. So I don't know. And the tight ends are not really looked that much with the tight end position is not very looked that much in the end zone. Him and Zach Ertz only had 8 combined targets in the end zone, so they're not really looked at when it comes to scoring and the scoring drives and opportunities. So that's something that makes me concerned about him. But there's so much upside with Goedert that I think that it's just you have to kind of look at what's valuable with the tight end position when you're trying to draft past with Waller off the board or Kelce or Kittle. After that, man, it's like you're trying to find upside and value. So I feel like that's a good value pick for him, that you're not going to see the guy that could have potentially so much value that can bring you top 5 tight end fantasy points if there's opportunity there. So I think 8's a good spot for him. At number 7, I have Noah Fant. Last year he finished as a tight end 8. He scored 149.3 PPR points. He played 15 games. He had 673 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. He has 62 receptions on 93 targets. Now, he did have 17% of the target share. He was second to Jerry Jeudy. And the good thing about this year, too, he has a top 3 strength of schedule. So those are the good things about what happened with him last year and how he was utilized. Now compared to this year, that's where things are going to be a little different for Noah Fant. One, the biggest thing, he has Drew Lock as his quarterback. And you got Courtland Sutton coming back. He's the wide receiver 1. He got injured last year, so obviously I pushed Jerry Jeudy as the number 1, and Noah Fant he was number 2 in target share. But I think with that being the case, now Noah Fant becomes the 3rd option in my book, and so I think that that's the only thing that I feel like is going to hinder his upside. And also too, he doesn't line up in the slot at all. So that combined with Courtland Sutton coming back and then Drew Lock, I feel like he's just not going to have that upside that I was hoping for this year. But there's still potential there. Something to happen. There was some rumblings with Deshaun Watson that the Broncos were still interested in Deshaun Watson. You had Aaron Rodgers had a possibility that they're interested in trading for him. So a lot of things could change from now to training camp at the beginning of the season. But as of right now, number 7 for me for Noah Fant. Now moving on to number 6, I got TJ Hockenson. Last year he finished as a tight end 5. He had 175.3 PPR points. He played 16 games. He had 723 yards and 6 touchdowns. He had 101 targets and he had 67 receptions. The good thing about it, he had 19% target share last year. But what I think was going to increase his value this year and its upside is the departure of Marvin Jones makes room for Hockenson to possibly be the number 1 option there, right? For Jared Goff. Jared Goff's in a new offense. TJ Hawkinson's been, they're all kind of learning that new offense with the new head coach and everything. But I feel like TJ Hockenson is a guy that could be his safety net. And also too, they lead the league in targets available. So I think that's a good thing as well, where you got Marvin Jones gone, Kenny Galladay gone. Now you got some younger guys that are going to be, Tyrell Williams is there, and whatnot. But I think like Hockenson, this is an opportunity for him to really become an elite tight end if he gets the opportunity. He was top 10 in the end zone targets for a tight end, so that's good for him. But the only downside to him is that, like I said before, he has Jared Goff as his quarterback. I've never been a fan of Jared Goff. I think that it was really Sean McVay that really helped him become what he is. But I could be wrong. I would love to eat crow if Jared Goff becomes a good quarterback even after leaving the Rams. But the other downside to TJ Hockenson, he has the league worst strength of schedule for a tight end for fantasy football this year. So that's the only downside to it. So I think there's really a good upside there. I think there's good options for the value for him to get him pretty cheap, but also have some increase, get some real good value out of him because of the fact that he's going to have the targets there. So a guy that you would, hopefully consider as a value pick. And at number 5, I actually got Kyle Pitts here. Wasn't going to rank him this high until Julio Jones left Atlanta, but, obviously he's a rookie. We really don't rank rookies so high. However, this is a guy that everyone is just just, can't wait to see play. He's a guy that brings so much upside. He's kind of a hybrid tight end with wide receiver, great route runner, super athletic. The good thing about the Atlanta Falcons, they utilize the tight end position. So even when Julio Jones was there and Calvin Ridley was there, Austin Hooper was a guy that got a lot of the target share. So I think that last year tight ends for the tight end for the Falcons had a 14.5% target share. So that's good availability there. But also I think, however, because of Julio Jones leaving, I do think that Pitts becomes the second option for Matt Ryan. I think that you got Calvin Ridley, but then after that, I really don't see. You got Russell Gage there, but I feel like because of the athleticism of Kyle Pitts, I can't see why he can't be the second option and be a really good tight end this year. I think this is a guy that I think his hype is going to continue to go up in drafts, and he's a guy that could definitely bring so much value there if you can get him pretty cheap. But the good thing about it, you got a top 5 passing offense in in Atlanta, and then you got a top 5 strength of schedule. So I think combine those two things. Now we don't know exactly how Atlanta's going to be without Julio Jones, but I feel like productivity wise, I feel like you'll get some good value from Kyle Pitts. Now moving on to number 4, I got Mark Andrews. Last year he finished as the tight end 6. He scored 170.1 PPR points. He only played 14 games. He had 701 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. He had 58 receptions on 88 targets. The good thing about this, he had 23% of the target share. That was second second on the Ravens. He had the third most targets for a tight end with 51 from the slot. So he's a guy that is getting utilized in the slot as well, which is a good thing to kind of see a tight end have more opportunities there. He was second best in the league with 13 end zone targets. So he was a guy when they got close to the end zone, that was Lamar Jackson's one of his go-to targets, and that's where he got a lot of his production from. But the downside about this now is that scoring opportunities, right? You got Hollywood Brown, you got Sammy Watkins now coming over from Kansas City, and they drafted in the first round Rashad Bateman. So that kind of makes me a little bit concerned because the Ravens are a run-heavy team. Lamar Jackson, he obviously is a guy that's going to run for 1,000 yards. And he doesn't really have that upside when it comes to passing. He had 26 passing touchdowns last year, so the opportunity for that to happen for Mark Andrews, I just don't know if it will be there. But he's a guy that, like I said, when you're looking for fantasy football, you're looking for a tight end position, especially when you wait to get a tight end. These guys that are ranked 4th through 12th, these guys that you're going to plug and just play and hope for the best, hope for a touchdown, hope for a couple of good catches, because I think if you can get around like 8 to 10 PPR points from a tight end, I think that's pretty decent for a week in, week out basis. And anything above that, that's all great. But that's what you expect from the guys from 4th to 12th. But I think when you get to the top 3, these are the guys that you really want to make sure that if you're going to draft them, these are the guys that you're hoping to get you production and really justify the value why you picked them so high. So at 3, I got George Kittle. So last year he got injured, but he finished at the tight end 19. He had 125.1 PPR points. He only played 8 games. He had 634 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. He gave you 48 receptions on 63 targets. So even only playing 8 games, 63 targets, that's a lot of targets for a tight end only playing 8 games. We got to think about going back to Robert Tonyan, right? Robert Tonyan only had 59 total targets in 16 games played, and George Kittle had 63 and only 8 games played, so that's pretty crazy to me. The good thing about it, last year he was, he had 11% of the target share. That was 3rd on the team, but you have to understand too, he was hurt. I think majority of the time he's going to be Garoppolo's number 1 guy. But then now you think about, okay, is it going to be Jimmy Garoppolo? What if Trey Lance now becomes a star? Would he utilize George Kittle like Jimmy Garoppolo does? Like, that's the only thing that's why I have him ranked 3rd, because of the injury history. Also, like a change in quarterback, or is he going to be utilized the same way? I think George Kittle is the best overall tight end in the league when it comes to being a blocker and being a guy that can catch the ball. And that's the other downside too, is like he is a good blocker, so he doesn't get the opportunities to be that receiver like Kelce or Waller. But I do think that with George Kittle, another downside too is Deebo Samuel. These guys, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, these guys are going to be trending, upward. I think they're going to have a big opportunity this year. I think these are two guys that could definitely be very good value picks for the wide receiver position. They're definitely undervalued. I think they're super talented. I think they could take that step up this year. But I think 3 for George Kittle is a justifiable position just because of who I have at 1 and 2. And at 2, I got Darren Waller. Last year he finished as the tight end 2. He had 278.6 PPR points. He played all 16 games. He had close to 1,200 yards. He had 9 touchdowns. He had 145 targets. He led the league in targets, and he had 107 receptions. So Darren Waller, if you had him, you're really happy with him last year. The good thing about it, he had 27% of the target share that led the team. And then the next closest guy was Nelson Aguilar with 16.7% target share. That was only 91 targets. So I don't see much of a change this year, even with the addition of John Brown. I don't think that really changes his target share. I think he's so talented, he's so athletic, he's such a mismatch that I think that he's still going to receive the same amount of targets. He was top 5 in end zone targets this year or last year. And I guess if I had to say anything down about Darren Waller is Henry Ruggs, that guy that steps up this year. Like I mentioned, John Brown. Does that provide enough for taking targets away from Darren Waller? I don't think so. I think Darren Waller is Derek Carr's go-to guy, and I just don't think that that's going to change this year. I still think Darren Waller is an elite fantasy tight end, and I don't know if I'll take him early in drafts, but he's definitely a guy that the value's there. Because I play in an auction league, so if the value's there, I'll definitely go grab Darren Waller to have a set it and forget it type of tight end. But for me, Darren Waller's 2. And obviously, the number 1 ranking of 2021 for me is Travis Kelce. I mean, you can't debate that. He was the tight end 1 last year. He had 312.76 PPR points. I mean, that's insane. He only played 15 games. That's an insane stat for a tight end. He had 1,416 yards and 11 touchdowns. He had 105 receptions on 145 targets. That tied with Darren Waller for the league lead. And he had 42 of those targets in the slot. So, the thing about him that he's so dynamic. The Chiefs use him in so many different ways. He comes and does motions. They give it a shovel pass. Like, he's a guy that you got to always pay attention where Travis Kelce is, because he has the opportunity to score when they get close to the end zone. So, he was top 3 in end zone targets last year. He's in the top passing offense in the league. He has Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback. I mean, he is the guy that's going to. He usually leads. I cannot talk right now. Jeez, he usually leads the offense for the Kansas City Chiefs in targets. He had 24% of it. So the target shares. So when you talk about Travis Kelce, it's always gonna be Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. I think that's gonna be same old, and I think like that doesn't change. I haven't seen anything, that makes me think that Travis Kelce is on the decline. I think you probably have another 1 or good, 2 more good years with him. But Travis Kelce for me is number 1 guy. So there you have it. Those are all my rankings for tight end, for my top 12 tight ends. So to kind of review, I got Travis Kelce at 1, Darren Waller at 2, George Kittle at 3, Mark Andrews at 4, Kyle Pitts at 5, TJ Hockenson at 6, Noah Fant at 7, Dallas Goedert at 8, Logan Thomas at 9, Robert Tonyan at 10. I got Mike Gesicki at 11, and then I got Evan Engram at 12. So let me know what you all think. Please let me know what you think about the rankings. Leave a comment. Do you see why I do? Like I rank these guys where I have them. I would love to hear about your rankings and what you would change. So if you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment below. Let's talk about it. But it's one of those things where things change. I could always change my rankings up later on in the off season when it comes to closer to the season. But as of right now, this is what I have. This is what I have for the top 12 tight ends. I mean, if you really look at it, the tight end position is a very, very hard position to really get consistency out of unless you have a Waller, a Kelce, or a Kittle. If you look at what happened from the fantasy points from receiver 1 to 12. Kelce had 312.76 PPR points. And the 12th tight end last year that was considered a top or a tight end 1 was Hunter Henry at 145.3 PPR points, right? So, only 1 tight end scored over 300 points, which was Kelce, and he only had 1 tight end score over 200 PPR points, and that was Waller. So, if you look at that from wide receiver 3 to 12, there was only a 31-point difference that separated those guys. So unless you, like I said, unless you have Kelce or Waller, and maybe in a healthy Kittle, you're pretty much trying to stream tight ends. Unless you have a guy that's one of these guys that kind of comes up every year. We have a guy that just blows up and has he was a sleeper that no one really thought of, and he kind of blows up, and all of a sudden he's a waiver wire pickup. But that's the thing about tight ends. It's almost like kind of like the quarterback position. You got the guys that are going to be super efficient, and that you have a lot of fantasy points, but then you get then from one ranking to the next, doesn't separate a lot. So I think that's where tight end is as well. So just really pay attention to that when you're looking at your draft board and trying to kind of hold back and not be so eager to get some of these guys, after a Kelce or a Waller. But yeah, so there you have it. I mean, if you have any fantasy football questions, please email me at chip@gridironfantasyfootball.com. I'll always leave an email down in the description if you want to, give me an idea of what kind of videos that you're looking for the rest of the offseason. I'm still going to do my overvalued players, my undervalued players, and some of the sleepers that I will, I think are be guys that you can look for in your draft throughout the offseason here. But if you want to follow us on social media, you can find us over on Instagram at Gridiron Fantasy Football. If you want to see us on Twitter or follow us on Twitter and Facebook, we're at the Gridiron Pod. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Like I said, please, leave a comment, share, like this video and the podcast. I really appreciate it. And like I said, I'll be going over some of my sleepers and undervalued players in the next coming up video. So hit subscribe so you don't miss any of those videos. But that's it. Hope you have a good day, and we'll see you on the next video and podcast. Take care.